So, hello. In this session today, we'll try to create our own API and we'll learn how to create an API so that those APIs can be used. In the last session, I showed you how to connect an API or how to integrate an API to our Android application. But that API that we used was a dummy API that is available for testing purpose to learn. But in real applications, we have to create our own APIs. So today I'll be discussing about how to create our own API. And for that, I'll be using this table, the student detail table that you can see here. This student detail table has columns ID. This is auto-generated column. Then we have name, father's name, mother's name, date of birth, school, and status. These are the columns for which we'll try to create APIs through which we can get the data of any student by entering the ID, or we can register a student through an API. A new record will be inserted, or we can display a list of records that are available in the student details. So this is the backend table. This is in on the local host server. The database name is, you can see, is school, and the table name is student detail. Now I'll come to the API. So the first API that we want to discuss is an API in which we will display the name, father's name, mother's name, date of birth, school, and status of a student. And the ID of that student will be entered through a form. So this is the method from which the ID will be taken from a form, and that ID will be sent to the database, and then will fetch those columns from the database and try to display. This code is written in PHP language. We can use PHP, we can use JSP, we can use ASP. Any language can be used to create API, depending on the server on which this API will be hosted. In Linux server, usually we create APIs through PHP or through JSP. JSP is the Java server page Java language through which APIs are created. Then we have an option to create through PHP, and then we have an option to create through Microsoft ASP. But for that, the server should be Windows server. But usually these days, the servers are Linux servers. So I'm displaying the method of creating APIs through PHP. So first of all, whenever we want to connect with the database, we have to supply the server name, the database name, etc. that we have stored in this dbconfig.php. So I'll open the dbconfig.php for you. This is the code. I'll open with this, and you can see the dbconfig or .php code. These are the four parameters that are required. The server name, that is localhost. The username, by default, the username on XAMPP server, we will be using XAMPP server. So on XAMPP server, the username is by default root, the password is empty, and the database name is a school. As I have shown that in this program, we'll be using the database, school database. So here we are using the school database name is school. Then we have to create an object in which these four parameters are passed. We are using that name as $CON. $CON is a variable that we create in PHP. And this is the constructor that we are calling with the four parameters. If this is properly connected, then we can proceed with it. But if there is some error, we cannot do anything. So if we are checking whether there's some error in connectivity. If there is some error in connectivity, then it will stop here. Now these lines of codes are required in our API. So here, if I come I have included this dbconfig.php so that first of all, it is getting connected. Now on the server request, post will be using the post method. So from the post method, we'll be supplying the value of the ID for that particular student. Then from the database, we'll execute this query and we'll try to fetch those values. The values will be name, father's name, mother's name, date of birth, school, and status. These are the different values that will be fetched. Once these data are fetched, we have to keep it in JSON type. The content will be type JSON. So the first line that we have to use is this is the first line that we are using here, where we are mentioning the meta or the type of the content, and that is JSON. So the content type that is created here is the application in the JSON format. And then we are using an array. The name of the array is result, in that the first parameter is success and the value is 1. And the second parameter is message and the value is success. So if we are able to fetch the record so that it can be displayed. We keep these values. These are just an information to the application that the result has been successfully fetched. If there is some issue in getting the record, then suppose we enter a value of the ID which is not available in the database, then there will be no record fetched. In that case, the success will be zero. Zero is used as a false value. So that means we are unable to find any record, and the message will be no data found. We can write it this way also. No data found. It is up to user which type of value you want to return to the user when the data is not found. And it may happen that we are using the post method, but on the code it is get method used, or there is some issue on the server request. Then we'll be sending the success value will be -1. The success value is 0 means the program is running, but we are unable to fetch the data. The success value -1 means there is problem in connectivity, or some issues are there that the data cannot be even connected to be fetched. So the success value is -1. So any value that is 0 or -1 is considered to be problematic. That is, error is found in the code, and then the message is error. So they have, excuse me. So you can see here, if we are able to fetch the record, the success value will be 1. If we are able to not fetch the record, success value is 0. If we are getting some error, the success value will be -1. So the value of the success parameter of the array tells us whether the value properly executing or not. And the message will be given to let the user know what type of issue happened, whether the record properly fetched. We can say here record fetched. We can write like this: dot fetched for display. Okay, so this is the message that we are giving to the user, that the record is fetched. There is no data found in the database, or there is some error in the connectivity. Now, this value, that the error, that the result array that we are creating, this has to be converted or encoded into the JSON format. So the last line is to encode in the JSON format. We are calling this function JSON encode, that encode the value of this result array into JSON format. So if the data is fetched, the record will be stored in an array and it will convert it to JSON. If there is an issue, then also it will be converted into JSON. If there is some error, again is converted into JSON. So the value that is returned is the last line, the echo JSON input. This is the value that is returned. So in case when the data is successfully fetched, the success messages as well as the data will be sent to the application. Or in case of error, the messages and the array will be sent without any data. Only the message will be sent. Here also only the message is sent to the application. So once again, if we try to see, this is the API. In this API, there will be a form in the application. Like when we are creating a mobile application, we'll create a form in which we'll enter the ID of the student and click the submit button. That submit button will connect with this API. This is a select API. And this API, what it will do, it will fetch the record from the database and store it in array and convert it to encode it into JSON and send to back to the application. So what we are doing here is we are trying to accept the ID of a student from the user, and then we are converting the data fetched from the database into JSON. To convert into JSON, we are using two lines. This is the first line. Here we are telling that the content that will be sent from the API to the application will be of JSON format. And here we are converting the value to be sent into JSON. So these are the two lines that are important. This is converting JSON and this converting JSON. So either this condition will be true or this condition will be false, or either there will be some error. So in all the cases, the result that will be sent to the application will be an array that is converted into JSON format. So to create an array, these are the values that are getting fetched from the database. Then we are storing it here. Uh, to understand this, there are some eligibility that you should know how a database is created. You should know the select command. You should know how record is fetched from the database after the database is connected. The only thing new that we are using here is this function, the header function. Then this method of displaying success and the messages, and this and JSON and Pro. Other things are we already know. We make web applications using PHP or web application using any language. This is the method through which the database is connected and the record is fetched. Now, before this is applied into an application, we can check whether this API is working or not. Because as you know, on the Android application, if we have to test this, we have to create the application and then integrate it. And the whole method is we have discussed in the last session. And that takes some time. So we have an application that is called Postman. You can download Postman. It is a free application. And here you can write the name of the API. The name of the API is, you can check it here. What is the name of the API? This is select one record API. Select one API. Where it is stored? You can see it is stored in the htdocs API folder under the XAMPP. So this is the path that we have to mention in the when we are using in the Postman. Like local host will comprise D, XAMPP, htdocs. That means we are pointing up to here by through the local host. Then we have to write API. Then we have to write a school. These are the folders you can see here. We have D colon XAMPP, htdocs, API, school, and then in school folder we have these four APIs. So to test it here, we have to write localhost API school. And what is the name of the API? You can see the name of the API once again. You can see the name of the API is select one record API. So what we will write here? We'll write here select one record API. Select one record API. Now we have to pass the ID of the student. So to pass the ID of the student, we have to come here and These are the parameters that are written. We'll first delete this. So we have to pass what we have to pass. We have to pass ID. And what is the value? We have to pass the value one. So this ID will go here. This is the ID. So if it is case sensitive, if you are writing in a small, you have to write it as small. And from here, it will be passed to the database select command. And in the database select command, if you go and see here, the for the ID one name is Amit Kumar, Rajkumar, Sita Devi, Sanjay School. This status is active. So this data is to be fetched in the form of an array. So if we run this program with the ID one and send, you can see that first of all, it is showing that it has successfully executed. The value is one. Messages record fetched for display. And these are the record name, father's name, mother's name, date of birth, school, status. If I enter here, the value is 2. Then you can see it is Neha Singh, Anil Singh, Sunita Singh. Why? Because for record number 2, you can see that for record number 2, the Neha Singh, Anil Singh, Sunita Singh. And we have ID up till 11. So if we enter any value that is more than 11, suppose I give 20, and then we send, then it is saying success is 0 and no data found. So it is going to the else part. Here you can see that it is going to the else part. So this is the first API that we are creating our own. What is this API doing? This API is taking input on the ID of an student and fetching the record of the student from the database, and then it is displaying in the JSON format. So in the JSON format, you can see this is how it is getting displayed. And if you compare it with the last API that we used, you can see that it is in the same format that the result was getting displayed. I'll show you once again success and this. So if I come to the last API that we used, this is the API that we used. Is the API to test. I'll run here to show how the records were displayed. You can see it is user ID, title, and completed. These are the 4 values. And in our API, you can see that we have message, name, father's name, mother's name, which of this. And this is how it is getting displayed. It is in the same file. So this is the first API. Now, if we come to the second API, suppose there are multiple records that we want to display, then what will happen? We'll not take this value. This is another API. This API is student list retriever. Suppose we want to display all the students. So what changes are required? We will be creating select asterisk from student detail. Here we are not giving any where clause. So all the records of the student table will be displayed. And then we are creating a result array. And in the result array, we are creating a data array because there will be multiple records. Next, everything is same. So if the count is greater than 0, then or more than one record, then instead of if, we'll be using a while. And you can see that we are using index array. All the values are first stored in the index array, then we are pushing it into the result data. This is array push. Why we are using array push? Because we are using a result array Why we are creating a result array? Because there are multiple records. When there was only one record to be displayed, we were displaying it this way. All the thing was in result array directly, but in this table, we have an result array. Result array will have a data array. So there will be multiple records, multiple rows, and each row will have multiple records. So we are getting index name, father's name, mother's name, date of birth, and pushing it. And when all the records will be fetched, we'll use success as one, message is success. If no record is found, then we'll say no data found. If there's some error, we'll say error. To run and execute this, so we go to the, let us see what is the exact name of this student list retrieve API. So I'll go here, student list retrieve. Student list retrieve API, and I'll use some. So here you can see that in the first array, we have a data array. In data arrays, we have used the first record. In the first record, we have Amit, this. Second record, third record, fourth record. So here we have multiple record for each multiple elements for each record. So in this type of situation, when there are multiple records being fetched, we have to create an array of array. In single record, we have to create only one array. That is why I am showing both type of programs. There is a single record. In a single record, if the record is fetched, then this is the data that is to be sent. But in case of list, if there are multiple records, then we are fetching it through while loop, pushing it into the array. We are having a result array. The result array has a data array, and we are pushing everything in the data array. And then we are sending and after encoding it into JSON format to the application. So this is one way of sending multiple record. Now, these are the two APIs which we are in which we are getting data from the database and sending to the application. Then there is one API required where we will be registering something. Suppose the student is taking admission, so there is a registration of a student. In that case, the data has to be sent from the application to the or to the database. So this is a student registration. So what changes are required? We'll be taking name, father's name, mother's name, date of birth in school from the form. Then we'll be inserting the data into the table. And if the insertion is done properly, we will send the message this record inserted successfully. If there is some issue, we'll send that there is some error. What is the error will be displaying. If there is some issue in the request method, then we'll be saying that the invalid request is happening. You can see that in this select one record, we were fetching only student ID. But here we are fetching name, father's name, mother's name, date of birth, school. And then we are entering it into the database with the status as active. And then we are sending the message to the application whether the record inserted successfully or there is some error or there was some invalid request. So to execute this, the name of the API is Student Registration API. So we can run Student Registration API. Then we have to go to the form data. In the form data, we have to use the name. The value is suppose uh, um, um, uh, the date of birth is in Y by MMDD, so I'll be entering that format only. And now see what are the values we are entering. Entering name, father's name, mother's name, date of birth, and the school. The school name is similar. Now we have to send it. When we send, what value will be there? His father's name has some issue. Although the record got inserted, but there's an error, undefined error in father's name. So we have to check. Acha, father's name has this person. Okay, his father's name. So although the record was inserted, let us see the value that was inserted. And this name was missing, other values got inserted. But if we write the correct spelling, we have correct the spelling. So we should change it to, because it is Rajkan, other value, we are taking it as the same value, which is so you can see that we are getting the success message as record inserted successfully. How it is happening, you can see here that we are taking these values from the user, from the application. We are telling the application that the result will be in JSON format, we will send. Then we are inserting the values into the database and we are checking whether the value was properly inserted or not. If the value was inserted, we are giving inserted successfully. If there is some error, we'll give the error has happened. And if there is some invalid request, we give invalid request. So these are the different types of APIs that can be required when we are creating an application. The first API is to display one record. The second API is to display a list of values. Third API is where we are passing value from that application to the database. Then there can be an update API where we want to update it. We can have a delete API where we can delete some value. So I'm leaving the delete and update API for your practice. We can discuss it in the next session if you have some issue. But try to execute these APIs. Try to create a table, similar table, and create APIs and download this. This is a free application, Postman. This is a free application. You can use this application to understand how it is running. And next session, we'll create some more APIs. Then we'll try to implement these API in our Android application. I hope you have understood. These are the three things that are required. You have to create table in the database. You have to create the API using any editor. Then you have to check it through the Postman. These are the three applications that we do.